Welcome to the official Mountain View Church podcast. For information about our gathering times, location, or how you can connect with us, visit us at mvc.life.
There's something spiritual about gathering around a table with family and friends, sharing stories and experiences, laughter and joy. It's a place where busyness ends. It is here, at this four-legged flat surface, that God's presence is ever so clear, a time when His creation can draw near, when fellowship is sincere, and all other distractions disappear. It gives us a chance, in our fast-paced, technology-induced lives, to revive the art of taking time, to slow down and have a meal with those who we might not otherwise. Because food is more than just a source of fuel. It's an area where God wants us to delight. With over 10,000 taste buds, eating goes further than just our appetite. It is a time when we can gather and come together as one, building new relationships. The table is open for everyone, because the table is where broken sinners find connection and belonging. Through talking and walking through our struggles, we're strengthening the bonding of the church and its calling to reflect the image of Christ. You see, the table mattered to Jesus because it was at the table that He foretold the nature of His death. He didn't give them a sermon. Instead, they sat down and broke bread. And it was through that meal that He was led to give one of the most compelling lessons that He ever said. He met them where they were, and He delivered it face to face, adding another layer to His all-redeeming grace, wanting to connect and look into their eyes as He described the importance of carrying out His teaching when they were left behind. Food can be such a powerful way of growing in community. We should truly know the people in our pews and seats, not just look at the back of their heads as we listen to the pastor preach. The church shouldn't be contained to one location for 1 hour a week. It should be sustained through relationships. So let's meet and eat and speak with one another. Because the only way that the church can grow is if its people know that they have a home. Because if you feel connected, then you will be invested. So go and test it. Have a meal with someone new, and let God's glory be manifested.
Good morning. Everybody feeling good? Man, that worship was like, I did not want to leave it. So good. I love that I don't have to do it all the time. So thank you to the worship team for just doing such good stuff. My name is Ryan. I'm the worship pastor here, and this is my wife, Monica.
Hello.
And yeah, like Tracy said, we've been in the middle of a series called City Life, which is this thing that we've kind of been experimenting with. Last week, Todd gave kind of an overview, and this week we're talking about something specific called City Table. And so for any of you who don't know what City Table is, City Table came out of a longing in our church for rich community and connection. And we had tried, I guess I'd call them small group campaigns. Like we would be like, it's important to do small groups. And then we would be like, for 8 weeks. And people were like, I don't know if I can do 8 weeks. And we were like, 6 weeks. And I don't know, timing's everything, but we attempted that, but it just didn't yield the result we were wanting. It didn't really, the content was good, and the time together was good, but there was only a couple groups who maybe really got something, and I think the rest were like, that was great, and then moved on. And so going back to the drawing board, because we knew that meeting in groups was important for us to, especially in a growing church, to still see each other and hear each other. We kind of went back to the drawing board and talked to Todd about this idea of what City Life was, what it looked like. And he said, I want people to walk together and eat together. And we were like, yeah, and then we could. And he's like, no, I want people to walk together and eat together. And that simplicity is what we tried to operate from. And what was funny was getting people just to have a meal together without some hovering expectation of where's this going to go, like how often do we do this now? That freedom actually led to the very thing we were wanting. We started to see more and more organic community happening and organic connection happening. And it came from freedom, but also an invitation from somebody to say, hey, would you want to come over?
Yeah, I was so excited when we were asked to speak on City Table because this is like the very thing that makes my heart beat. I mean, we have experienced so much genuine and authentic connection just gathered around our table. And I love that the table is something that's a little bit more unstructured than, a small group or going through a book or something. It's just a chance to really see what God's going to do around the table, what conversations are going to happen. And it's been the place where I have felt the presence of God the most in my life, the place where I'll just all of a sudden be overwhelmed with these feelings of, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. I've had the chance to minister to other people and been ministered to encourage other people and been encouraged myself, and just had this opportunity to feel seen and known by people and to connect in a really intimate, beautiful way that happens around the table. And I think for us, we have seen just as much restoration and transformation and healing take place in our lives around the table through our community as we have on a Sunday morning or at a conference or at any other type of event. We really experience that around the table. And Sunday mornings is kind of like an appetizer for us, and then we gather throughout the week and throughout the month with our community and our tribe, and we kind of get to have the full meal together and to really dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, for the past couple of years, I've been experiencing that transformation that Monica's talking about, not just from, experiencing it because it's in our home, but actually experiencing it in my family, to see the girls watching mom preparing a meal and that we're having people over and just this expectation that builds in our home. And then to see Monica shine, definitely in her gifting. I'm definitely the extrovert guy, but actually preparing the place for those people is where she is so gifted, and I ride sidecar. But from that vantage point is actually where I've been able to see what that intentional time together, what that table provides. And I think I could go into a lot of things. There's so much that the table provides in my mind, but to not go down a rabbit hole, I'll try and stick to just a couple things. The table for me provides, I think, just the number one thing would be it provides pace. It provides kind of a disruption of our normal rhythms. For us, in this season of life, 2 little girls, 2 and 4, or they would say 2.5 and 4.5. They're real specific.
It's very important.
And one on the way, another girl on the way. And yeah. And
thank you. I'm trying not to puke up here, so pray for me. I got
the
my crackers, so just try not to throw up.
Yeah, so in that pace of life, it's definitely one that is fast-paced. And maybe you don't have kids at that age, but all of us are operating in this busy, quick-paced life. For us, the end of our days really look like us falling towards the finish line. Okay, we're gonna get the girls fed, and then we're gonna go and get them bathed, and then we're gonna get them in bed, and we're gonna scarf food down our throat, and then we're gonna go and find the best Netflix show that there ever was, and we're gonna, get horizontal quickly. And
sometimes Mama just wants to put her feet up at the end of the day, so we're just trying to cross that finish line.
Yeah. But what's funny is that just that little intentional effort of having a family dinner, even if it's picking up some fast food on the way home, but choosing to sit at the table and slow down, to see our little girls' faces, we're eating as a family, you could see them just start to light up.
Yeah, you can really see the difference it makes when there are some nights where we feed them first because our dinner's not ready yet. And so, but the nights where we all sit and pause and eat together, and mom, the phones are away, the laptops are away, and we just sit and talk about their day. And my 4-year-old, she could talk to you all day long. Yeah. She's very chatty, and she just lights up having that quality time together as a family.
And in our busy life, it becomes like a breath, we walk around all day just breathing, and yet those times when whether it's our Apple Watch going off or some type of reminder to just be present and breathe, just take a deeper breath, and you feel that everybody's starting to do it. But you can feel that like, oh, it comes over me. Like, I needed that. I needed that. And so as we're, choosing to be intentional with that time at the table, we feel that breath come into our home. And it's funny that when we don't do that, when we rush towards bed and we rush towards the couch, whether it's TV or not, even if we're doing something, some creative work we're working on together or something, it's so much harder to be intentional with that time because we weren't intentional with the table.
Yeah, and food is beautiful because it's not just for fuel. Like, food is a chance to pause and sit and eat. And I think in our more modern culture, it's really easy to just scarf your food down really quickly. But if you allow your meals to say, okay, I'm eating right now. Now is a chance to slow down, to take a deep breath, to connect with the people around me, to connect with God. It can really set a tone for your day of having those moments to breathe and to invite God into your moment. For me, it's even just with my coffee. I have coffee twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. And my coffee also signals, okay, it's time to take a moment to connect with God. And that has just become a part of my pacing of my day and the reminder to slow down.
Yeah, and not everybody has, a picturesque memory of the dinner table. We know that. But there's probably some table, some place, some moment that provided that same experience in your life. If you were just to take a minute and think about it, there's some special memory where it required you to show up, it required you to slow down, it required you to be present, but it also resulted in some deep filling that was needed. And if you haven't experienced that, then don't you want to?
Yeah.
Don't you want to have that?
Yeah.
Don't you want to have just a moment in your day that just feels like fresh wind in your lungs?
I feel like we all long for connection and community, but for some reason it's like we enter into these seasons where we're overwhelmed or we just can't figure out how to thrive in that season. I know for me, when we had our first daughter, Evalie, about 4 years ago, when she was about 5 months old, we also ended up taking in my 15-year-old twin brothers. So now, here I am navigating being a first-time mom, taking care of my teenage brothers and that awkward relationship of like sister versus parent. And they lived with us for an entire year. And during that year, I remember feeling so isolated and alone. And it's one of the things I hear the most from moms and women is like, oh, I need to find my tribe. I need women to connect with. And when I look back at that season, I think of two main things that really helped pull me out of it. And one was just crying out to God and asking him for connection and community. And I felt like he just encouraged me to show up. I think it was really easy for me to not really show up for things. My husband's a pastor at a church, but our life at the time was busy and I was tired and I was, trying to find my new rhythm. And God just encouraged me to show up for things. Like, if you look at our bulletin board, there are so many events constantly happening at the church, so many opportunities for connection. And I think for me, there was still this resistance that I had, or I would sign up and then the day of be like, I think I'm just going to stay home. And so for me, it was showing up for things. And then when I was there, really being present and having conversations with people and following up with people. If you meet somebody at a women's event or something that you connect with, getting their phone number and following up with them. And for me, God spoke to me a lot about, changing my role from invitee to inviter. So he encouraged me to start reaching out to people, to not just wait to be invited to things or to have people, invite us into their lives, but to start intentionally pursuing and connecting with people. So we just started inviting people into our home. We would talk to each other and pray like, okay, who can we invite for dinner this week? Who has God put in our lives to connect with and pursue relationship with? And so we would pray together, and it would be a different person, each week, a different couple, or maybe a few people. And
well, not really each week, like once a month.
Well, the goal was like once a month, but sometimes once we got into our rhythm, it was more often. But on that note, I felt like when I first started hosting dinners, when I first started having people gather on the table, I was like a stress case. I was kind of overwhelmed. I wanted the food to be perfect. I wanted the table to be perfect. What if we, I want to have a good conversation? I just, I kind of got caught, I got in my own way a little bit. And it was hard for me to enjoy it because when you're stressed and anxious about your food and everything being perfect, you can't enjoy it. But what I learned the more we did it was that people don't want perfection, they want connection. And so we just started my goal didn't become to like perform and like impress people with how great of a cook I am. My goal was to like create an atmosphere that was welcoming and encouraging and a place for people to connect. And I think once we figure out as women especially how to simplify hosting, how to simplify the table, how to get out of our way and just make it something that becomes a natural extension of ourselves that doesn't stress us and overwhelm us, we're much more likely to do it more, to be more willing to have people over because it doesn't overwhelm us. It brings us life and it becomes something that makes us come alive.
Yeah, the two things that you said that just I want to repeat is just from the perspective of someone who was longing for connection with people and longing for community was that you decided to show up. That choice, I mean, Joey was singing about it in worship, like that we get to choose to do that. We get to choose to be there. And that just that little act of I'm gonna be in made a huge difference in our lives. And from that is when we got the word that we needed to become inviters and not just, we were out in RSM, which there's probably only a few of us in RSM, a couple people in RSM.
Thank you, one person. Can you come for dinner next week?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, Kelly, raising the roof. That was special. That's my moment today. Thank you. So we're out in RSM, so you can feel isolated from.
But don't be afraid to come over, okay?
That's right.
It's only 25, maybe 30 minutes.
That's right. As long as there's no traffic and you take the right roads. So we felt isolated in general because we were out there, but then to become, not making excuses for people, to start saying, well, they wouldn't want to come out there, the drive's too far, or maybe we should do it somewhere else, but to just become inviters. So both showing up and responding to when God, impresses something on your heart. And
we just committed ourselves to that a lot. We committed ourselves to valuing community and realizing like we needed to make space and time in our lives for community. So we looked at our schedule too, and we were like, okay, if we were going to say yes to community, we might need to say no to a few other things in our lives so that we can make space and time for community and for connection and for shared meals together. So that just became a big part of our core values as a family.
Yeah, and for us, so coming out of that season of feeling isolated in RSM, which we're back in RSM, but for a short little stint, we actually got to be in Dana Point, right next to our basically family, the Kelsos, and the Prendavilles we had known for a little while, but we were like 20 feet from each other's house, and yet this still became like the rhythm became. We should get together. We should make it happen. And these are people that we love. We have community with them. We have deep connection with these people, and yet we still aren't showing up to those things, or we still aren't making the time. So it became a commitment to say, I'm going to be in it.
And that was something I just was like, I will take this on as my role to be the person to actually like, okay, let's pull out our phones, let's set a date, like let's be intentional. Because the truth is your life gets busy, especially with kids and work and, our neighbors traveling a lot for work, that if we didn't, even though we were neighbors, if we didn't intentionally like put a time on the calendar and make it happen, it wouldn't have happened. And sometimes it just takes one person in a group sending out that group text, making it happen, making the extra effort. And that was me for a while, and I owned it.
But it was contagious because we started to see it actually pop up in the other people. Like Krista or Monty or someone would start hitting up the text chain when we were going silent, or Emily and Travis would throw something out when we were going silent. So it becomes contagious. And actually what's funny is it made me think of this, as we were talking about this, preparing for it. I always get up and if you ever see me lead worship, I always get up and I say, if you've got your coffee, come on in, we need you in here. There's something that happens. There's something that shifts in the room when we're all in. When we all take part in this thing called worship, we feel that that shift that happens. And for some of us, it might be just, earth-shattering shift. But for some, it just might be that simple posture we need to take to kind of shake off screaming at our kids on the way here, or whatever it might have been, and by being all in, it takes committing. And I get to preach and be a officiant for weddings, thanks to Todd, and when I when I do that, I meet with couples and I talk to them about the 3 kinds of loves it takes to make a marriage work. And when I'm talking to them about that, this third love is a commitment love. And I'm not trying to get you to, start making yourselves committed to each other like a husband and wife would be. But there's something about that commitment love that it actually is the thing that makes us do the things that bring feelings back. We've been in relationships with people who we're doing life with, and it can become something where it's not really feeling the same way it did. You're hitting a wall in some ways. You're not connecting as much as you'd like to, or whatever the thing may be. But being committed to each other is actually the thing that makes you continue to throw out a text message, and what's my role now, and I'm going to choose to be an inviter, and that thing actually makes you choose to be in, and that's what actually brings the feelings back.
Yep. And I think, we get to take an active role in that, in creating the community that we want to see in our lives. And that was such a big thing for me, is like taking ownership of that. And, it would have been really easy to sit at home and to, kind of complain to Ryan that I have no friends or that I want community. But really just taking that like active role and seeking that out and being really intentional. And another thing I wanted to encourage people in is I think so many of us are longing for a tribe and longing to find people to connect with. And one thing that really helped me was this realization that the people you think you're going to connect with might look differently than you originally thought. A lot of times we can size people up within minutes of meeting them and assume whether or not we're going to click with them. And yes, there might be people you will naturally connect with more than others, but I think when we expand our horizons of the types of people that we're willing to connect with, and when we can be inclusive, and even friends in different ages and stages of life, that has blessed us so much to have couples and people in our lives who are in all different seasons. Some of them, their children are fully grown like the Kelsos, and that has blessed us. But we're also really good friends with Bryson and Rachel, who are their, Todd's daughter and Monty's son, and that has blessed us too, to have and to do life with people who are in all different seasons of life. And I feel like it enriches our relationships.
Yeah. And as we were talking about that, it's what brought up kind of the idea of looking at Luke 14, the parable of the great banquet, was this idea that Jesus, for me, when I read it, it's like Jesus kind of comes off a little bit like pushy, and then I realize that he's talking to the Pharisees, who he's probably already kind of like annoyed with on some level. So I give it to him, but it kind of comes off in this weird way where he's, so I'll go to 12. I'll just read it, and then we can talk about it. But the Luke 14, verse 12, I have it on the screens. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." And when I first read that, I was like, okay, so then what are people going to feel like who get invited over to the Kirklands? What does that say that they are? And what I think it actually... But I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to be laughing. What it said to me was actually, in this whole parable, if you get a chance, because I don't want you to be here all day, but in Luke 14, Jesus is just continuing to do the thing that I love that he does in everything. He knows where we're at. He meets us where we're at, but he invites us into more. In worship, what Joey's talking about, and even with what Be Free Indeed is talking about, is there's more. There's something else. There's that we feel that inside ourselves, like that there's more. There's something deeper here. And Jesus is constantly and beautifully inviting us into more of that, not pushing us or forcing us, but really sometimes it can feel like how it reads in this thing of a little bit like a prick, like it sticks you a little bit, like you're kind of like, man, that kind of rubs me the wrong way, and yet it's because he's calling you into more. He wants you to not miss that if you're inviting brothers and sisters and the normal inside your comfort zone people, but you're actually going outside of that norm. And for these people, it was status. It was a certain way to live your life. It was the religion you had to do things because of the religion. And just through Luke 14, he continues to just poke at like, yeah, but wouldn't you do this? Yeah, but what about that? Well, look at this though. And like if you continue on in 15, you have this guy who responds. He says, it says one of the people at the table with him heard this, and he said, "Blessed is the one who will eat and feast at the feast of the kingdom of God." So he's kind of basically saying, yeah, but like everybody's going to be there. Everybody will eventually experience the kingdom of heaven. And what I love is that Jesus then uses this parable that we, continue to call the great banquet of that a man was preparing a banquet. He invited many guests, and at the time of the banquet, he sent a servant to tell those who had been invited, "Come, for everything is now ready." But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, "I bought a field, and I must go and see it. Please excuse me." Another said, "I've just bought 5 yoke of oxen," which we all do on a regular basis, "and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me." And still another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." And the servant came back and reported. And just to kind of summarize, this man becomes angry and he invites people that he wouldn't normally invite. So he gets frustrated, which we can understand. There's times where we've invited specific people, a group of people, to come over to our house, or we've signed up to be a part of a group, like how Monica and I are hosting the group that's in RSM. And if anybody would like to be a part of it, there's pretty much nobody signed up for it right now.
Come. It's going to be awesome.
So if you're in the area or not.
Wednesday night, 6:30.
Yeah. But you can become... you can get focused again on the thing. So in this example, what I love is that the man doesn't get hung up on the excuses that are provided by somebody. Instead, he just invites someone else. And I think what's even more powerful is he doesn't revoke the invitation of those who gave him excuses. We can read this, and there's so much you can pull out of Luke 14. Like 5 different messages popped up while I was trying to prepare for this thing. But the funny thing is that with the invitation that gets sent out, you could start to put this into a people going to heaven and not going to heaven. But I just read it from this fresh perspective of Jesus, if he's the man in the story, is inviting people into a banquet. He's inviting people to the table, and their own choice is what makes them not taste the banquet. It's the thing that makes them not show up and not experience this good life. Whether good excuses or not, that's what happens.
And I was so struck by that because I feel like I've made excuses before why I couldn't show up to things, and I've also heard other people's excuses when they cancel 5 minutes before a dinner party, and so I've been on both sides of that. And I know for me, I don't want to have excuses stand in the way of me experiencing all that God has for me and the abundant life that he has for me. And a huge part of the abundant life is intimacy and connection with both God and others. And the 2 excuses that I see all the time and that I have made for myself before are just that I'm too tired. And it kind of just can become this agreement that you make in your life of like, oh, I'm just too tired. And what I found is that, yes, like we're all tired. Like I am exhausted. I'm almost 8 months pregnant. I'm tired a lot of the time. But there's something, a lot of the time. But there's something about gathering around the table and sharing in community that refreshes and revitalizes my spirit in a way that just like taking a nap or watching Netflix could never bring for me. And so like on Monday night we had Bryson and Rachel over for dinner, and we ended up talking till 1 a.m, and I was so...
Even though you had a hard stop at 10:30.
I was like 10:30 cut off. No, it was till 1 a.m. and I was so tired, but even though my body was tired, my spirit was full. Yeah. And so I think that's what we have to remember, is that sometimes we have to push through that physical exhaustion because you're probably going to be tired anyway, but why be tired and lonely instead of just tired? That's what I tell myself. So, yeah. So it's like pushing through the tiredness, so at least now you get that really healthy dose of intimacy and community that you're craving.
Yeah, and I'll just try and wrap it up. I know we're close to the end here, and people are starting to already feel like, I already said yes. I said yes to lunch, and I have to get to it. I guess the big thing for me is that ending portion in Luke 14, I think it's in I don't know. But basically, it's just this idea that Jesus doesn't revoke, or the man doesn't revoke the invitation. And so what that just was screaming at me as I'm reading through this in every different translation I could get was that there's still time. You still have a choice. It's a parable. We don't know where, he says that they're not going to taste the banquet is one thing, but it's possible that someone could be on their way to go see the land that they had to see because they just bought it, and go, I'm gonna go back and be at the banquet. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna choose to be in. I'm gonna choose to take my part, my place in this. And that would be my encouragement, is whether it's that you've been feeling this thing like you're supposed to start being the inviter, and you're supposed to start, at least not letting the short little time we say, hi, I don't remember your name after 5 seconds, and then I sit down and wait for the message. Yeah. Or it's maybe just, I'm gonna talk to you right after this, making those little steps, and then maybe it's, we're gonna go to lunch, or we're gonna have you over, or whatever it is.
The simple act of finding, those people that every Sunday after church are like, oh, we need to get together soon. Okay, now when you say that, pull out your phone, put a date on the calendar. Don't just, because we can so easily become someday people, but what if we actually pulled out our phones and we made it a really, an intentional point to get it on the calendar, to make it happen, and to not just wait for someday, I think a lot of times people wait for, someday when I have a bigger house, or someday when we redecorate, or someday when I learn to cook. But you can start so simply, and you can start today.
Yeah. I was going to have you just jump ahead to the word you had last week, because it was...
So I was spending my time in the morning praying. I was out on the patio having my cup of coffee, and as I was closing my eyes in prayer, God just showed me this vision, which sounds silly, but it was of a game of musical chairs. And he just showed me how so many of us are living our lives running around and around, worried that the music's going to stop, living in this state of lack, like we're going to lose our seat, or there's just not enough time. There's not enough time. And God was speaking to me that his invitation for us is to come and to slow down, that there's a seat at the table with your name on it. So come in, sit and eat and enjoy intimacy with him. And that's his invitation to us, and it's also the invitation that we get to offer to other people. And I was just struck by that. As a church of, however many people, if there were, say, 500 families who committed to share a meal together even once per month, over the course of a year, that would be 6,000 meals shared. And that would be 6,000 opportunities to hear each other's stories and to get to know one another and to pray for one another and encourage one another and to hear what God is doing in each of our lives. And that gives him glory, and it blesses us.
That's right. That's good. Yeah, and on that, there's a seat at the table. For some of us, that seat is one of invitation just to come and dine. And, we have these groups that are starting up. Just sign up. Just come and be a part of one of those groups, to just experience what it looks like to come and feel at home, to feel at rest, to feel maybe just like get out of the isolation and just get out and take that bold step. So that invitation to you, maybe that. But for some of you, like I was saying, the invitation might be that it's time to be the inviter. It's time to shift from, okay, God, I think it's time for me to start inviting people into my life to experience the good life that you have. And so I just want to pray, and I know that we're over already, probably on time, and we're going to still do worship, so if the band wants to come up, because here's what I'm inviting you into, is to respond. I want you to respond to whatever's happening in your heart. I don't want you to just go outside, and if you've got to go, I also want to give you the freedom to go. You can go. Just talk to somebody on the way home about what just happened, because even if it's just you and God talking in the car. But I want to invite you into responding to what's just been brought across. And we have kind of these, mini tables over on the sides, and they've got the ability to give and to respond with our giving. They have the ability to respond in communion, to actually have bread and wine with somebody. I would ask that if you're going to do it, just even if somebody's just sitting next to you, just ask them if they'll take the bread and wine with, or it's not wine, sorry, I keep saying that. Bread and juice, that they would take it with you. Because there's just something that shifts when we're all in, when we all choose to be in. They're going to play, do the shorter version of the, I'm just kidding. But They're gonna set a space. They're gonna set a place for us where we can actually do that, where we can respond and be present with God and be present with each other. And I would just ask that you step into that you be all in with that, and then we'll all rush as fast as we can to our cars and get out of here. But there's something that can happen when we respond to what God's doing. So let me pray, and I'll bless you, and then we'll worship. God, thank you for our church. Thank you for this awesome group of people that have all chosen to show up to church. They've all made the choice to be present in this room. And so, God, as we draw near to you, you draw near to us. And so we just ask, God, that you would draw near to the people in this room, whether it's those that have been feeling isolated, those who've been feeling betrayed, or that somehow they've been, wronged. But whatever it is that we're holding on to that's keeping us out of the banquet, we want to step back in. We want to say yes to what you've prepared for us. And so, God, I bless these homes. I bless these families with deep, rich connection and a deep breath of your life, your good life, that would just carry them through the rest of these weeks. So we love you, Jesus. Pray this in your name. Amen. Amen.